The question is if grievance has been noted, and I call the member for Fremantle.
It was great listening to the member for Tangney finish his 10 minutes with a kind of 180-degree turn towards bipartisanship and saying let's leave politics out of all this after 9.5 minutes of pure politics. But look, I'm happy to say, as someone, and I've said this since I first came into Parliament, that we need change on the GST. We need a fair deal on the GST, and Federal Labor was the first side of politics to commit to a 70-cent floor, and we're happy to support a lift to the 75-cent floor. So there is agreement, belatedly, on how to get a better share for WA on the GST, and we're happy to look at the way that change can be made permanent. But let's just, for the member for Tangney's benefit, and for the benefit of the people of Western Australia, look at this through clear eyes. We need change so that WA gets a fairer deal. It is intolerable, despite the importance of having horizontal fiscal equalisation. It is intolerable when a state like Western Australia falls down into the sort of 30 cents in the dollar share. It's particularly intolerable when that happens counter-cyclically, and that's what did happen in Western Australia. We found ourselves receiving some 30 cents in the dollar precisely at the time that we were going into recession. We've only just, for the first time in 3 years, experienced 2 consecutive quarters of growth. We've only just come out of recession that was bequeathed to Western Australians by the Barnett Liberal government, just as they bequeathed to the new McGowan government $30 billion of debt. We need a change that ensures that doesn't happen again. It has impacted on Western Australia. Where have we got to? Well, we have got to the point now where there's a bipartisan commitment to 70 cents in the dollar, and there's a bipartisan commitment to rise to 75 cents in the dollar. But how do we get there? I mean, what's extraordinary is the member for Tangney has the gall to stand here in the Federation Chamber and say we did this. You know, we fixed this. The Prime Minister, who's been in the chair for 9 days or 10 days in the Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison ... government, he's fixed this. Where is the money? Where is the money? I mean, have we had one additional cent of GST out of this government now in their 5 years? We haven't had one additional cent in GST out of this government in 5 years. Now, consider the timeline. The member for Tangney and all those on his side are happy to make a big deal about the process. Oh, well, we asked the Productivity Commission to look at it. They asked the Productivity Commission to look at it. They put the Productivity Commission report date back so that it fell conveniently beyond the most recent budget. Did the solution that they've now put forward have anything to do with the recommendations of the Productivity Commission? No, absolutely not. The Productivity Commission said this is the way to deal with it. The solution that the member for Tangney and his government have come up with has got nothing to do with that. So why did they wait for the Productivity Commission report that they delayed beyond the 18-19 budget? Precisely so that they wouldn't have to put their hand in their pocket and pay 1 additional cent to Western Australia. If they had come forward with the plan, and I mean, I've put a question actually in writing to the Treasurer on this, I'd like to know when the Treasurer asked Treasury for the costings that form the basis of the plan, and I'd like to know when he took that plan to Cabinet, because I've no doubt it was before, there's no doubt it was before the Productivity Commission report landed, because the plan has nothing to do with the Productivity Commission report. The question is, did it happen before the budget? And if so, why wasn't that solution? Why wasn't 70 cents in the dollar delivered in the 18-19 budget? Do you know how much that would have been worth to Western Australia? $1.8 billion in this financial year, $1.8 billion in this financial year that this government could have delivered. What are they going to deliver? They're going to deliver zero, because by the time we get to next May, we'll have an election, and these jokers more than likely won't be there anymore. So they have done absolutely nothing for Western Australia, and they have conned They have conned the people of Western Australia to some extent. In fact, I don't think they have, because I think the people of Western Australia get it. They've conned some in the commentariat. The fact that they've conned the CCI in Western Australia is no great surprise, considering the ambitions that are held by some of the people involved over there. But what, in effect, they've done, despite the I can't keep count which Prime Minister it was. It wasn't the current Prime Minister. I think it was the one in the middle. The middle Prime Minister of this government floated the idea of a 70-cent floor more than 2 years ago. Now, how do we get to a 70-cent floor? There were two factors. The first was a commitment from federal Labor to a 70-cent floor. We committed to it and we budgeted for it. And the second ingredient was the election of the McGowan government. It was the election of the WA Labor McGowan government, and for the first time in 8 years, after having a cosy relationship between the Barnett Liberal government and the Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison, ... watch this space government, that cosy relationship suddenly came to an end, and the McGowan government held the backsides of Liberal members in Western Australia to the fire and said, did you have a look at those results in March 2017? Do you know what's going to happen if you jokers don't come along with something sensible? And it was only at that point, it was only out of mortal fear that there was finally some move on the part of the 11 House of Representatives, coalition representatives and all their senators, all of their riches, all of their cabinet ministers, all of this influence that did nothing for 4 years, the state government that did nothing for 8 years, finally, as with every motivation in this government, when they get a bit desperate, when they sniff the cold wind of electoral oblivion, they decided, well, we'd better do something. So they came on board with Labor's 70-cent floor, and they've added to that, in the relatively distant future, a 75-cent floor. And we are happy to support that because it was our idea. We are happy to support that because it was the solution that the WA Labor McGowan government has essentially forced people like the member for Tangney and all his colleagues to do, out of mortal fear that there won't be very many of them left when the people of Western Australia have already passed judgment on them at the state level, passed judgment on them at the federal level. But the people of Western Australia are not fools, and so the fact that you keep running colour full-page ads in the West Australian say that the GST has been solved, and they haven't seen a single additional dollar through a sharp and bitter recession, is not lost on the people of Western Australia. Recession in Western Australia. Many quarters of falling demand in Western Australia, for the member for Tangney's benefit. That's the definition of a recession. Yeah. Falling state demand, record high unemployment. In any case. Yeah, no, he just said last week, for the member for Tangney's benefit, that we've just had 2 consecutive quarters of growth. We've broken the recession that was bequeathed to the people of Western Australia by the Barnett government, during which time the member for Tangney was the State Liberal Director of Western Australia. In any case, let me just finish by pointing out something else. Let's not forget in Western Australia, let's not allow the GST to cover a multitude of sins, because the GST has been very poor, and it's been very poor because of Liberal federal and Liberal state governments. We've fixed the first part. We've got a McGowan Labor state government, and now we're going to try and fix the next part, and that's when we'll deal with the GST. But in the meantime, let's not, with our focus on the GST, ignore all other areas that this coalition government has shortchanged Western Australia. We are getting far and away the worst deal when it comes to the NBN. The fibre to the node 19th century copper technology is without doubt the worst NBN technology, and Western Australia is getting 60% of its line network in fibre to the node, which is half again as much as any other jurisdiction. New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria are all getting around 40% of their line network in fibre to the node, a much higher proportion of fibre to the curb and a much higher proportion of fibre to the premise. We're getting 60%. When NBN decided earlier this year that they were going to provide an additional 400,000 premises with fibre to the curb, did they use that to help correct what was going on in Western Australia? No. We got less than 10% of the additional premises. We are being shortchanged on the NBN. We're getting ripped off when it comes to the ABC. The member for Moore has had a recent conversion to the practice of honesty and transparency. The member for Moore has come out and said that we're getting a terrible deal on shipbuilding, and that's why he had to support the end of of that Prime Minister in the middle, the one I was talking to before, Mr Turnbull. He had to support bringing him down because he acknowledged we were getting a terrible deal on defence shipbuilding. So we do need to fix the GST. We need a federal, shortened Labor government to do that and to fix all the other ways in which we've been taken for granted by the Liberals for too long.